The first thing I noticed at Kelsey Weller's engagement dinner was not the flowers, but the empty place beside my husband. A plate waited next to Grant, silver-lined neatly. Yet my chair had been carried to a narrow table near the kitchen doors. At the welcome table, every guest wore a cream card, while mine was a white label reading Brielle Sutton. Maintenance help. Diane watched me read it, then smiled. You'll be more comfortable with the people working behind the scenes. I looked past her and found Grant beside his father, aware of the label in my hand. Did you know about this? I kept my voice low, giving him one chance to choose me before the room chose for him. Grant glanced at the missing chair, then shrugged. It's Kelsey's night. Brielle. The main table is for family, so don't turn a seating change into another work crisis. A few guests fell silent, and he laughed as if their silence embarrassed him more than his mother's decision. You handle the background better than anyone. Just sit down and let tonight be easy. That laugh settled everything the plastic badge had only suggested. I slid my wedding ring free and placed it on the untouched plate beside him, where the diamond struck the china with one sound. From now on, Grant, you answer for everything submitted under my name. I laid the maintenance help label beside the ring and walked away without touching the chair Diane had chosen for me. Behind me, Grant did not follow. He picked up the ring, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and told guests I was under pressure because I took my job too seriously. I reached the doors before he called. Brielle, don't ruin this for Kelsey. But he never asked me to stay. I left him beside my empty plate, not yet understanding that the seat his mother removed was the smallest thing he was about to lose. I did not drive home after leaving the engagement dinner, because home still had Grant's clothes, Grant's voice, and every excuse I no longer trusted. Rowan Beck, the electrician who had trained beside me years earlier, had already left a key under the mat after the inspector's call 2 weeks before. I set my laptop on her kitchen table, opened the licensing portal, and pulled up every record filed under my number. Several forms claimed I had inspected Weller properties on days when I had been working hours away. The Weller family had nearly lost insurance coverage across all 3 venues after repeated overloads, undocumented repairs, and electrical failures during booked events. Grant had come to me terrified, asking for help because canceled contracts would have damaged the family's only reliable income. I mapped the unsafe circuits, created a phased repair plan, met inspectors after normal hours, and signed each report knowing my license stood behind every page. My work kept the venues operating while repairs moved section by section. Yet Grant presented the recovery as his own management strategy. Paul praised his son in front of employees and clients, while I became the woman called only when another panel failed or another deadline tightened. Once the immediate danger passed, they kept using old forms carrying my license number for work I had never reviewed. I enlarged one message Grant had sent Paul after a rushed installation. File it under Brielle. She always cleans up whatever comes after. That sentence removed the last excuse he had offered me about a clerical mistake. My name had not been sitting harmlessly on forgotten paperwork. It had been carrying liability for people who no longer wanted me at their table. Every contractor, insurer, and inspector reading those forms believed I had personally approved the work. I copied the records into the folder my attorney had told me to preserve, then documented where I had actually been on each disputed date. I had not yet accused anyone of fraud, but I was finished allowing their survival to depend on my silence or on the professional reputation I had spent my entire adult life building. When Grant and I first married, he traced the calluses across my palms and called them proof that I had never waited for rescue. He loved how I could enter a room of panicked people, find the failing circuit, and give everyone a plan before fear became damage. After his family's insurance crisis passed, those hands became something he wanted hidden whenever clients visited. He still wanted my work, but no longer wanted anyone to see who had done it. Grant began asking me not to arrive in work clothes, even when Paul called because a panel had failed before an event. If I corrected Grant when he explained a problem incorrectly, he pulled me aside and whispered, "You don't have to prove you're the smartest person here." Diane called whenever a light failed, an outlet sparked, or a contractor missed a deadline, then introduced me as the woman Grant had helped settle down. Paul thanked his son for every repair plan, while my signature remained on documents keeping their insurer satisfied. The unfairness was not that they refused to applaud me. Grant accepted a larger role, better pay, and more authority because of work I had designed, then used that authority to make me smaller. He wanted me available when the venues were in trouble, but quiet when anyone asked how those problems had been solved. Each time I stayed silent. Another piece of my work became his reputation. A week before Kelsey's engagement dinner, Diane sent a dark dress and said it would photograph better beside the family. Grant asked me to wear it, pull my hair back, and avoid talking about work with his father's guests. I asked, "How can they need me whenever something fails?" Then act embarrassed by what I do? He adjusted his cuff and answered, "There's a difference between being useful and knowing where you belong." That sentence explained the badge before Diane printed it. Maintenance help was not a new insult invented for one dinner. It was the title they had given me privately for years, placed where everyone could read it. I first suspected Grant and Adrian Cole when a supplier copied me on a revised lighting order for the North venue. The note claimed Adrian had approved the change at Grant's request. Although she handled interiors and had no authority over electrical equipment, when I called, she hesitated before saying, "Grant told me you were no longer involved with the family properties." Then she added that he and I were only sharing a house until Kelsey's wedding was over. I did not mistake Adrian for an innocent bystander, because she knew Grant still came home to me and chose to meet him in hotels anyway. The room charges, dinners, and gifts appeared on a joint card I was legally responsible for paying, each one matching a night he claimed an event needed him. Yet Grant had not promised her my chair, my house, or a place inside his family. He had promised that once Kelsey married, he would leave quietly and build a life with Adrian, using the success he claimed was his. The deeper problem appeared when I compared Adrian's original emails with the versions Grant had forwarded to Paul. In her messages, she warned that the cheaper fixtures did not match approved specifications and required review by a licensed electrician before installation. In Grant's forwarded copies, those warnings were gone, replaced with language making Adrian appear to approve the substitution herself. My license number protected the technical work, while her name protected the purchase Grant wanted pushed through. I read both versions again because the alteration changed more than one order. If the equipment passed inspection, Grant could take credit for saving money. But if it failed, he could claim I had signed off or Adrian had approved it. He had built 2 exits for himself, and both required a woman to remain useful, confused, and close enough to blame. Grant had not chosen Adrian over me. He had found another capable woman whose name could stand between him and consequences. The affair hurt, but those altered emails showed exactly what his promises were designed to hide and who would pay when they finally collapsed completely. The engagement dinner continued after I left. With plates arriving and music covering the silence, no one wanted to name. Diane moved between tables, explaining that I was overwhelmed by work and had turned a seating change into a personal attack. Her explanation could not erase the badge or the chair beside the kitchen doors, because guests had heard her say that was where I was most useful. Kelsey sat through the first course, watching Grant act as though my absence were an inconvenience he expected to correct. She finally leaned toward him and asked, "Are you going after her?" Grant slipped my ring into his pocket and answered, "Brielle always comes back when something needs fixing." Paul agreed, certain they could call me the next morning with a problem large enough to pull me home. Kelsey looked from the empty plate to the kitchen table, and she understood that her brother believed my loyalty was a service he could summon. Before dinner ended, Paul received notice that I had withdrawn my certification from every filing I had not personally inspected. The licensing office had not closed all 3 venues, but it required the disputed areas to remain unused until an independent electrician verified the work. Their insurer requested supporting records as soon as my name no longer guaranteed those reports. Music still played while Paul read the message twice, because the party had not stopped, but the protection behind it had. He called me first. "You're punishing Kelsey over a family disagreement," he snapped. And I answered, "I didn't close anything." I confirmed what I inspected and refused responsibility for what I did not. When he insisted family did not treat each other this way, I reminded him that Diane had announced hours earlier that I was not family. Grant called next, beginning with an order and softening when I did not bend. "Come back, Brielle. We'll bring the chair over, and you can tell everyone you misunderstood the joke." I asked only, "Who submitted those records under my signature?" His silence lasted longer than any apology he might have offered, and by then I no longer needed one. The next morning, I met with an attorney who separated the mess into 3 clean lines: my divorce, my license, and the records carrying my name. Oregon did not award a larger share of marital property because Grant had slept with Adrian, and I had no interest in using that affair as leverage. I signed a statement identifying every project I had actually inspected and every form I disputed. What mattered now was not who had humiliated whom, but who had submitted work under a license they did not own. The inspectors compared my job calendar, vehicle logs, signed reports from other sites, and the timestamps attached to the Weller filings. Several records placed me at their venues while I was documenting work hours away, making it impossible for both accounts to be true. That did not prove who altered each form, but it proved I had not performed the inspections Grant claimed. The disputed areas remained closed until independent electricians could test them and replace equipment that did not match approved specifications. Paul blamed Grant for reusing the old paperwork, while Grant insisted his father had ordered him to keep the events moving. Diane tried to frame the investigation as the reaction of a bitter wife, but the licensing officer asked only who accessed the account, who filed the records, and who benefited. Every answer returned to the same 2 men. Their family hierarchy carried no weight beside login records and dates they could not explain. Adrian received a request for her original emails and saw exactly how Grant had edited her warnings before forwarding them to Paul. When she confronted him, he urged her to repeat one story. She had followed instructions, and I had approved everything verbally. Adrian asked, "You told me Brielle was gone, so why does your defense suddenly need her permission?" She turned over the emails, hotel receipts, and messages to her attorney, not to protect me, but to stop Grant from placing another woman between himself and the consequences he had spent years avoiding through borrowed signatures. Convenient silence and charm. The inspection found no immediate danger across most of the Weller properties, but several installations had to be replaced, and 2 sections stayed closed until the repairs passed review. The family refunded affected clients, moved several events, and paid for the independent inspections they had tried to avoid. They did not lose everything overnight, but canceled bookings and stricter insurance oversight narrowed the life they had protected with my name. The damage came from their own records, not from anything I added after leaving. Grant lost his management role when access logs connected his account to filings carrying my license number. The signature issue moved through the proper administrative and legal process, but the job market answered first. No insured venue wanted him representing work that required accurate documentation, and he could no longer describe himself as the man who saved 3 properties without questions about the wife who had done it. When he called, he insisted, "I never meant for this to reach you." And I answered, "You put my name on it." It had already reached me. Paul surrendered control of maintenance and accepted independent supervision as a condition of keeping the properties insured. Diane resigned from 2 event boards after members who had attended Kelsey's dinner refused to support her explanation that the badge had been a harmless family joke. Too many people had heard her place me beside the kitchen because that was where I was most useful. Her version failed because the room had supplied its own witnesses. Adrian lost her Weller contract for failing to disclose her relationship with Grant and for ignoring irregularities around the equipment orders. Her original emails protected her from responsibility for the altered approvals. But they could not erase the choices she had made while Grant still came home to me. She accepted a lower position elsewhere and sent one apology that asked for nothing back. I did not answer, but I kept it because it was the first message from anyone involved that did not contain an excuse. Kelsey ended her engagement after her fiancé urged her to tell guests that I had become unstable and misunderstood the dinner. She paid the cancellation costs herself, moved out of her parents' house, and stopped asking me to repair what her silence had helped preserve. My divorce ended with my business, my license, and my lawful share of our marital property intact. No one escaped, but each person carried only the consequence created by their own decisions. A year later, my crew was larger, but I still signed only work I reviewed. My divorce left me with my business, license, and lawful property. I never asked for a Weller venue, a title, or an apology from Grant. I wanted my name separated from his choices, and that was true. Diane kept telling people I had ruined the family over a chair, but too many guests remembered where she placed it. Paul worked under outside supervision. Adrian moved on, and Kelsey began meeting me for lunch after admitting she had seen the badge before dinner. I told her, "Fear explains why you stayed quiet, but it does not erase what your silence allowed." We did not pretend one apology made us sisters again, yet she stopped asking me to make her feel innocent. I saw Grant again at a client appreciation dinner in Portland. As I passed the service hallway, he was sitting at a narrow staff table near the kitchen, wearing the standard suit of an event sales employee. The work was honest, but the authority he had built with my license was gone, and he answered to a manager who understood the details Grant once claimed as his own. He stood when he recognized me and began, "Brielle, my mother was the one who moved your chair." I did not stop, because the investigation had preserved the answer that mattered. Grant had seen the badge, watched his mother remove my seat, and laughed because he believed I would return when his family needed another repair. Inside the dining room, the man I had been seeing pulled out the chair beside him without turning it into a performance. He introduced me by the profession I had built, then continued the conversation as I sat down. I had not won because Grant was finally eating near a kitchen door. I had won because his table no longer decided what I was worth, and because the life waiting for me asked for my presence without demanding my usefulness first. Some endings arrive after the paperwork is signed and the final excuse stops mattering. I lost a marriage, but kept the name attached to my work, found friends who never asked me to disappear, and made room for a peaceful love that never required me to earn my own seat.